Democrats from high tax states like New York Governor Andrew Cuomo continue to blame President Trump's tax policies for hurting their residents by capping state and local tax deductions. However, new analysis does show that a majority of the residents in these high tax states were not benefiting from SALT deductions to begin with. Joining us now is Florida Senator Rick Scott. And Senator, do you have any doubt that high taxes are what's driving New Yorkers and other folks from high tax states to Florida?
Well, you know, they could fix it. They could cut their taxes. I mean, I'm very appreciative of Cuomo and Pritzker, Malloy when he was governor of Connecticut. I'd send him thank you notes. Raise your taxes, increase regulation, because we'll get more people to move to our state and we'll grow our economy and you will lose yours.
Senator, it's Kevin Kelly here. You know, what's pretty fascinating is that you were a businessman. You came in, you cut $10 billion worth of taxes, also 5,000 regulations in Florida. Were you surprised by the election in your state to fill your vacancy by cutting real close where you almost had a guy who wanted to come into your office and raise taxes?
You know, Florida's a 50-50 state. You got to get your message out. And so, I mean, it's a lot of work. But in our state, you know, who's winning? People with that want to believe in that want lower taxes, less regulation. And we added 1.7 million jobs as we kept cutting taxes and we controlled the size of government. So these, you know, I think New York's taxes are almost double ours, and we are bigger as far as number of people than New York. That's how inefficient they are. We've got the #1 higher education system in the country, record funding for K-12 education, record funding for the environment. So you can do both. You can care about all those issues, but you've got to have a good economy, and that's what's happening.
Governor Senator, I used to be being governor of the state of Florida. John Layfield here. I think you did a wonderful job as governor of the state of Florida. I'm from the great state of Texas. We benefited just like you did from a high tax states and poorly run states and people migrating to the south. What do you do, though, sir, with you have the SALT deduction that is subsidized by other federal taxpayers, but also when you have states that don't have a SALT deduction, a lot of times they're getting $2 for every dollar they send in as remittance from the federal government. It seems like an incredible shell game done for political reasons. How do you stop this?
Well, and I'll give you an example from Florida. We get paid half as much money, approximately, for every Medicaid recipient in our state as New York does from the federal government. That's not fair. On top of that, we get about 30% less than we put in for our gas tax. That's not fair. And so, you know, what they ought to do is they ought to make it fair. If the federal government's going to be involved in this issue, let's fund that issue. But let's don't play games on where the senator's from or where the congressman, man or woman is from. Let's don't play any games. This is our federal government. Be fair.
But, Senator, this is Carol Roth. I am from the great and corrupt state of Illinois. And if you look at where we rank, yes, well, if you look at where we rank, you know, we're at the very bottom. And, you know, to be frank, we are subsidizing almost all of the other states to the tune of $40 billion. So how is that fair for the people of Illinois that every year we're paying out way more than we're getting back from the federal government to that tune? I mean, shouldn't it just be level across the board? Why should we be subsidizing other states as well?
You shouldn't. You shouldn't. But, you know, why is Illinois' taxes so high? I mean, why is it in New York or Connecticut or Pennsylvania or California? I did 20 trips to those states to talk business people into moving because they're competing globally and they can't compete globally and pay higher taxes. Nobody's willing to pay a higher price for a product because somebody pays more taxes. And so they've got to figure out how to make it more efficient. But you're right. The federal government ought to be fair to everybody.
Senator, we have been talking a lot about the economy and health care over the last few days. Just a question, what would you recommend as the best way for us to fix health care with respect to both the cost of pharmaceutical as well as just the cost of health care in general?
If I came out of the healthcare industry. If you think about what you got to do, you got to figure out how to drive down the cost of the delivery system. We want everybody to be able to afford healthcare. If the cost of everything is so high, no one's been able to afford it. What I've been doing is organizing meetings with the pharmaceutical industry, with pharmacies, with PBMs, with hospitals, insurance companies, and say what would work to drive down costs. We've got to figure out how to drive down prescription drug prices. We've got to make sure we keep people. Take care of people if they have a pre-existing condition.
No, I know, but what are the things you do? We know what's not working. What would be the real prescriptive measures that you would do to get the cost down?
Here's some of the things that I'm toying with. Number one is if you walk into a pharmacy, you ought to, if it's less money for you to pay out of pocket, you ought to be able to do that. And it ought to be included in your deductible for your insurance plan. Your insurance plan ought to be able to tell you what your copayment is going to be for that year. If it's a drug that you're taking, and if you're on a statin, you ought to know what your copayment is. It shouldn't be changing during the year. I want to really look at why we're paying higher prices than Canada or Japan or UK or Germany and France. That just doesn't make any sense. So I want to look at that. But on top of that, I want to pass something that says that if you have a pre-existing condition, you're going to get health care. I grew up in a family, a very poor family. We didn't have health care. I had a brother that my mom couldn't get health care for him. We had to go 4 hours away to get somebody. It's very important to me that we do that. And then we've got to make sure our Medicaid program and our Medicare program are great safety nets, and we don't waste your money. I mean, somebody's paying for this.
Senator Rick Scott, we thank you very much for coming in. Former governor of the state of Florida, now senator from. Great to see you again. Please come back and see us.
Nice seeing you.